In a distant galaxy where stars and planets shone in the vast expanse of space, there existed a warrior unlike any other. She was known across worlds, her name whispered in fear and awe. Her reputation was built on a foundation of strength, skill, and sheer dominance. She was the epitome of invincibility. Her name was Jara, the alien warrior who could crush any opponent with a single blow, and her very presence struck terror into the hearts of all who dared to challenge her. Jara's home planet, Thalax, was a place of harsh terrain and unforgiving conditions, where only the strongest could survive. From a young age, she had been trained to fight, her mind honed in the ways of war and strategy. She was not just a fighter, but a symbol of power, a being who was feared across the galaxy. Kings and emperors, warriors and soldiers all trembled at the thought of facing her in combat. For years she had remained undefeated, her reputation growing with every battle she won. No one dared to stand against Jara. No one dared to challenge her authority. She had slain entire armies and taken down the most powerful beings in the universe. There was no one who could rival her strength, and she knew it. Her confidence was unshakable, her arrogance justified. To her, victory was a given. There was no question that she would emerge victorious, no matter the opponent. Her victories had earned her the title of the Untouchable. No one had ever landed a blow on her. No one had ever made her sweat in battle. The very idea of losing was foreign to her. Jara had become a legend, a figure whose name was spoken in hushed tones, a figure whose shadow loomed over entire civilizations. She had everything she could ever want: respect, power, and the fear of the universe at her feet. She was invincible, or so she thought. However, as the universe had a way of humbling even the greatest of beings, a new challenge was quietly stirring in the background. A human, someone whom Jara considered beneath her, was about to change the course of her fate. The first whispers of this challenge reached her ears during a routine victory celebration. The grand halls of her palace were filled with music, laughter, and the clinking of glasses as Jara stood among her loyal followers, basking in the glory of yet another triumph. But as she sipped her drink, a messenger entered, breathless with excitement. "Jara, my queen," the messenger said, his voice trembling. "There is a human on the outer rim, a mere man who claims he can defeat you in battle." The room fell silent. Jara's sharp eyes fixed on the messenger, and a sinister smile spread across her face. "A human?" she repeated, the idea both ludicrous and amusing. "Tell me more." The messenger explained that this human, unlike any other, had been challenging beings far superior to him in strength, skill, and intelligence. He had already defeated warriors who had made a name for themselves across galaxies. "He says that no one, not even the great Jara, can withstand his power." The messenger continued, his voice a mix of disbelief and fear. Jara could barely contain her laughter. "A human claiming to defeat me," she thought. "This is absurd." But despite the mockery she felt, something about the challenge intrigued her. No one had ever dared to question her abilities. Every warrior had either fled or fallen. None had ever spoken to her in such a way. There was something bold about this human, something that sparked a curiosity she hadn't felt in years. For a moment, Jara considered dismissing the challenge, brushing it off as another foolish fool seeking
fame.
But then, a part of her wondered if this human could truly be different. Perhaps this was a test, an opportunity to prove that her strength had no equal. Perhaps this was the perfect way to remind the universe just how invincible she was. "I will face him," Jara declared, her voice low and commanding. The room echoed with silence, and all eyes were on her. Her followers, usually so confident in her power, exchanged nervous glances. A human? A simple being of flesh and bone? They were all too aware of Jara's unmatched abilities, yet they did not dare question her. "Prepare the arena," Jara ordered. "This human shall see the true meaning of invincibility." Word quickly spread across the galaxy, and soon the universe was buzzing with excitement. The human's name, once a whisper in the dark, became known across star systems. People flocked to watch the spectacle, curious to see if the human truly stood a chance against the great Jara. Some thought he was foolish, Others believed he might be a worthy adversary, but no one knew for sure. As Jara prepared for the confrontation, she could feel the weight of the anticipation growing. It wasn't fear that she felt, it was something else, something new. What if this human could truly defeat me, she thought, the idea barely able to register in her mind. Jara pushed the thought aside, convinced that no one, especially a human, could match her in battle. I will destroy him with ease, she told herself, her confidence unwavering. And so the stage was set for the ultimate clash between the untouchable alien warrior and the human who dared to challenge her. The world held its breath as the countdown began, and Jara's destiny was about to unfold in ways she could never have predicted. The audience would soon witness a battle like no other, one that would shake the very foundation of what it meant to be truly invincible. The arena was a vast, open space, the ground made of smooth, reflective metal that shimmered under the artificial lights. Surrounding the field were thousands of spectators, their faces illuminated by the eerie glow of the arena's walls. Among the crowd, whispers and murmurs filled the air as they eagerly awaited the moment of confrontation. This was the fight of the century, a battle between Jara, the invincible alien warrior, and a mere human who had dared to challenge her. Jara stood at one end of the arena, her stance firm and imposing. She wore her battle armor, sleek and polished, with black plates covering her chest and limbs. Her long, dark hair fell behind her, and her eyes glowed with an unsettling intensity. Every muscle in her body was taut with the expectation of the fight to come. She was prepared for anything, except what was about to happen. Across from her stood the human, a man dressed in simple, worn clothes. His build was far from impressive. He lacked the towering muscles or the battle-worn look of the seasoned warriors Jara had defeated in the past. He looked out of place, almost fragile compared to the colossal power standing before him. But there was something in his eyes, a fierce determination, a quiet resolve that set him apart from the other challengers she had faced. The silence in the arena was deafening as the two fighters locked eyes. Jara felt a surge of superiority, her confidence swelling. This is going to be easy, she thought. One move, and he'll be done. With a single motion, the battle began. Jara's powerful legs surged forward, and she launched herself at the human with a speed that left the air crackling. Her fist swung toward him, aimed at his head. The force of her blow could have obliterated entire cities, but the human was ready. With a swift step to the side, he dodged her attack by a fraction of an inch. The audience gasped in shock. How had he managed to avoid her strike? Jara's eyes widened in surprise, but she quickly recovered. No matter, she muttered, tightening her grip on the massive blade strapped to her back. She swung it through the air, expecting to slice through the human with ease, but again he moved faster than she had anticipated. With a sudden, almost impossible twist of his body, he ducked beneath her blade and rolled away. The ground beneath him cracked from the force of Jara's swing, but the human was already several paces ahead, moving toward her flank. Jara paused, for a brief moment, her mind processing what had just happened. This was no ordinary human. She had assumed that his speed would be his weakness, but now she realized that he was more agile than most of the strongest beings she had encountered. I will not be outdone, she thought, narrowing her eyes. I will finish this. She charged, again her movements a blur as she launched herself toward him. Her blade swung down once more, aiming for his chest. This time she didn't intend to miss. The force behind her strike would leave no room for escape. But in a shocking turn of events, the human didn't dodge. Instead, he did something unexpected. He parried her blade with his own. Jara's eyes flared with surprise as their weapons clashed, the sound of metal meeting metal ringing through the arena. The human was holding his ground, his weapon, a small, seemingly insignificant blade, glowing with an unfamiliar energy. The blade hummed in the air, vibrating with a power that Jara hadn't anticipated. She pressed harder against him, determined to break through, but he matched her strength with surprising resilience. For the first time in her career, Jara felt the weight of her opponent's power. He wasn't as strong as her, but his resolve was unyielding, and his technique was sharp. Impossible, she muttered under her breath. No human should have this kind of strength. The human's eyes never wavered as he pushed against her blade, his stance firm despite the overwhelming force of Jara's attack. He wasn't just surviving, he was countering. His strikes were precise, calculated, aimed at exploiting the smallest weaknesses in Jara's defense. He moved with a fluidity that made him seem like a seasoned fighter, not a mere human. As Jara struggled to push him back, she felt a strange sensation in her chest, a twinge of doubt. Could this human really be the one to defeat her? She shook, the thought from her mind. No, she told herself. I will not lose to him. I am Jara, the unstoppable. But the human wasn't done yet. With one quick, well-placed strike, he forced her to step back. The force of his blow shocked her, throwing her off balance for a split second. In that moment of vulnerability, he lunged forward, aiming to strike her side. Jara barely managed to block the blow, her muscles straining as she deflected it. The audience watched in stunned silence, unsure of what was happening. Could this human truly match Jara? Jara's heart pounded as she took a deep breath, steadying herself. No one has ever pushed me like this, she thought, feeling a surge of frustration rise within her. She couldn't let this human win. The battle was far from over, and she would not allow her reign of invincibility to be shattered by someone so insignificant. With renewed determination, Jara advanced again, moving with blinding speed. The battle was far from over, and she was not about to let a human defeat her. The arena held its breath, knowing that the true test of strength had just begun. Jara's grip on her blade tightened, and the ground beneath her feet seemed to tremble with the power she was about to unleash. This was her domain, and she would not be defeated. Not yet. The crowd held its breath, the tension in the air so thick it felt almost suffocating. Jara, the mighty alien warrior, stood in the center of the arena, her every muscle trembling with the effort of holding back the rising tide of disbelief. The human, this mere speck of life, had already defied her once. Now with every strike, every calculated move, he was proving to be far more than just a fleeting challenge. He was a worthy opponent. Jara's sharp, glowing eyes narrowed as she studied the human before her. She could hear his breath, steady and controlled, the beat of his heart loud in her ears. His every movement was calculated. The blade he wielded, small, compared to her own, but deadly nonetheless, had matched her blow for blow. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Her confidence, once unshakable, wavered for a split second. I've never faced an opponent like him, she thought, trying to banish the unfamiliar feeling of uncertainty, but that brief moment of hesitation was enough to change the tide of the battle. The human, sensing her hesitation, surged forward. With a swift, unexpected movement, he slid under her guard and aimed a strike at her side. The force was light, almost teasing, but it caught Jara off guard. Her armor absorbed the blow, but the impact sent a jolt of pain through her ribs. It was nothing she couldn't handle, but the fact that he had managed to land even a glancing blow shook her to her core. She staggered back, more surprised than hurt. Her mind raced. How did he move so fast? How did he find that gap? She quickly regained her composure, but the damage had already been done. For the first time, Jara understood. This human wasn't relying on brute strength. He wasn't attacking in the way she expected. His movements were not based on power but on speed, precision, and something far deeper. Something primal. The human wasn't just fighting her. He was outwitting her. He knew where her strengths were, and more importantly, where her weaknesses lay. Jara gritted her teeth. I cannot let this continue, she thought. I am Jara, the unstoppable. I cannot be defeated. But as she raised her sword, preparing to strike with all her might, something inside her shifted. She had faced countless foes before, but never one who had such an innate understanding of battle. Every move the human made seemed to come from years of experience, from an instinct she hadn't considered. Before Jara could react, the human did something that caught her completely off guard. He dropped to one knee. For a moment, Jara froze, her mind racing. What is he doing? The human's posture was odd, as if he were giving up. But Jara knew better. This is another trick, she thought, clenching her fists around her sword hilt. He's trying to lure me in. But this wasn't a trick. It was a challenge. The human's face was now entirely focused, his eyes narrowing as he concentrated on her every move. And then he did something Jara had never anticipated. He threw his weapon to the ground. Jara blinked in disbelief. He's giving up? She wondered, a small laugh escaping her lips. Does he really think this will make me hesitate? But as she stood there, waiting for his next move, she felt a strange pull in her gut. The human wasn't backing down. No, he was opening himself to the universe, preparing himself for something bigger. She had misjudged him. This wasn't a surrender. It was a test of will. What is he planning? Suddenly the human stood, his stance completely different now. His arms were raised, his palms facing outwards in a calm and almost meditative posture. Jara had never seen anything like it. This is not a challenge of strength. It's a challenge of mind, she realized, her eyes narrowing with recognition. The human wasn't just a warrior, he was a strategist, a thinker. And somehow he had figured out how to exploit the most important aspect of the fight, Jara's own mind. The crowd began murmuring, unsure of what to make of the sudden shift in the human strategy. Jara's grip on her blade tightened. She had been trained to fight against everything, strength, power, speed. But she had never faced an opponent who used his mind as a weapon. He's not fighting the way I expected, Jara thought, her body tensing. He's waiting for something. What is he waiting for? The human's movements were slow, deliberate, as though he were preparing for something grand. The arena seemed to grow quieter with every second. Jara's heart pounded in her chest as the silence stretched on. What game is he playing? Then, in one fluid motion, the human picked up a piece of debris from the ground. An odd, jagged rock that seemed insignificant at first glance. But Jara's instincts screamed at her. There was something about this simple gesture that felt wrong. He's setting something up. Before Jara could process the thought, the human launched the rock at her, but not in the way she expected. The rock wasn't aimed at her physically. It was aimed at her mentally. As the object flew through the air, a flash of light sparked from its surface, and for just a moment, Jara's mind was clouded with images. Visions of past battles, of everything she had ever conquered. It was a distraction, a momentary lapse. In her focus, the rock struck her sword arm, sending a painful shock through her body. The effect was subtle but powerful. The distraction was enough for the human to close the gap. With one swift motion, he used his bare hands to disarm her. Jara stood momentarily stunned. Impossible, she thought, her mind racing to comprehend what had just happened. The human had disarmed her, not with strength, but with sheer force, of will and timing. The turning point had come. Jara had underestimated him, and now the human had taken control. The game had changed. The arena fell into an eerie silence, the weight of the moment pressing down on every spectator. Jara stood, her body trembling with exhaustion, her once unshakable confidence shattered. Her armor, though still intact, felt heavier than it ever had before. The human, this fragile, seemingly insignificant being, had just taken the advantage in a way that defied all logic. For the first time in her long, storied life, Jara was facing something she had never known. True vulnerability. The human standing before her was panting heavily, but his eyes remained steady, focused. His chest heaved as he caught his breath, but there was no hint of fear in his gaze. There was only determination, a quiet strength that Jara could no longer deny. She had thought him weak, thought him foolish for challenging her, but now, as she looked into his eyes, she saw nothing but resolve. How? She thought, her mind racing. How did he come so far? How did he outsmart me? It was then that she realized the truth. The human hadn't won through brute strength or overwhelming power. He had won by doing something she had never considered. He had outwitted her, played her own game against her. The very thing she relied on most, her confidence, her dominance, had become her downfall. The human was waiting for her to make the next move. He stood there, still and silent, his eyes locked on hers, as if daring her to strike. This is it, he thought. It ends now. Jara's mind raced. She could feel the heavy weight of the battle in her bones. Her energy was nearly depleted, and every muscle screamed for rest, but she couldn't back down now. Not after everything, not after coming this far. I am Jara. I am invincible. She repeated the mantra in her mind, trying to steady herself. But even she could hear the doubt creeping into her thoughts. This human. He has no fear. And that makes him dangerous. She gripped her sword tighter, summoning every last ounce of her strength. I will not lose, she thought, but the words felt hollow. The arena seemed to grow colder as she raised her weapon. The crowd waited in suspense, unsure of what would happen next. The human took a step forward, his hands held out in a calm, almost peaceful gesture. I've won, he said, his voice steady and confident. You don't have to fight anymore. Jara's heart skipped a beat. The arrogance in his voice was unmistakable, yet there was no anger in his words, only quiet acceptance. He was not taunting her, nor was he gloating. He was simply stating the truth that she could no longer deny. I've won? Jara repeated the words to herself, a strange sensation filling her chest. For a long moment, the two of them stood there, locked, in a battle of wills. Jara's hand trembled slightly, the weight of her sword becoming unbearable. She had never known defeat, and the idea of it was still difficult to accept. Her mind screamed at her to strike, to destroy this human who had dared to challenge her, but something inside her hesitated. He's right, she realized. I've lost. The truth of it settled in her chest like a heavy stone. She had never fought a battle like this before. It wasn't about strength or speed, it was about something deeper, something more fundamental. The human's strength lay not in his body but in his mind, in his ability to stay calm under pressure, in his unwavering belief that he could win. And in that belief he had triumphed. Jara dropped her sword to the ground, the metallic clang ringing in the silence. Her shoulders sagged, and she finally allowed herself to look at the human, really look at him. He wasn't just a fighter. He wasn't just a warrior. He was something far more powerful than that. You have won, Jara admitted, her voice quiet but resolute. The human nodded, his expression unreadable, but there was a hint of understanding in his eyes. He had not fought to destroy her. He had fought to prove something to both of them. And in the end, he had succeeded. You fought well, he said simply, his voice carrying a quiet respect. But strength isn't just about power, it's about heart. Jara stared at him for a long moment, the truth of his words sinking deep into her bones. She had lived her entire life believing that strength was defined by what one could physically conquer. But the human had shown her a different kind of strength, the strength of will, of determination, of resilience in the face of impossible odds. For the first time, Jara smiled. It was a small, knowing smile, one that spoke of a deep understanding. She had spent her life thinking that she was invincible, that nothing could ever touch her. But now, in this moment, she realized that even the mightiest of warriors could be brought down, not by strength alone, but by something far more powerful. I have much to learn, she thought, a sense of peace settling over her. But for now, I will accept my defeat. The crowd, who had been silent throughout the battle, erupted into cheers. It wasn't just for the victory of the human, it was for the recognition of the journey they had witnessed. This battle had not been just about one person overcoming another. It had been about breaking down the walls of invincibility, of realizing that no one is truly untouchable. Jara took a final deep breath, the weight of the battle lifting from her shoulders. She had been defeated, yes, but in that defeat, she had found something greater than victory. Strength is not about being invincible, she realized. It's about knowing when to fight and when to surrender. The arena fell silent once more, but this time there was no fear. There was only the knowledge that even the mightiest warriors can learn from defeat, and from each other. The human had won, yes, but in doing so, he had also won something much more valuable, the respect of the alien warrior who had once thought herself invincible, and in that moment both their lives changed forever.